Support for WUWM podcasts comes from Johnson Financial Group, helping customers build financial plans around their unique goals for over 55 years. More at johnsonfinancialgroup.com. Johnson Bank and Johnson Wealth, Inc. are Johnson Financial Group companies.
From 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR, this is Lake Effect. I'm Joy Powers. Today, we'll learn about 3 men who went missing during last summer's historic flooding and their family's search for answers. Then we'll look at the increased risk of flooding in the Milwaukee area and what's being done about it.
Flooding is the most common and most costly natural disaster in the state of Wisconsin, and with the effects of climate change, it's expected that more frequent and severe storms are going to increase the amount of flood damage that takes place.
Plus, we'll look at the network of public and private organizations that provide free meals to kids in Milwaukee during the summer.
Children's food issues are an economic development issue, right? There's a reason why families are having difficulties providing adequate nutrition for the whole family, including their kids.
All of that is coming up on Lake Effect. This is Lake Effect from 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR. I'm Joy Powers, and thank you so much for joining us. 3 men went missing during the floods last summer. All 3 were immigrants who came to Milwaukee seeking a better life, but they'd been living outdoors. Despite 2 of the bodies being recovered, the Milwaukee Police Department and Medical Examiner's Office haven't confirmed that they died in the flood. That's left their families seeking support and answers. Gina Lee Castro is a public investigator reporter with the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. She joins WUWM's Jimmy Gutierrez to share about her reporting on the 3 men and their families.
When I think about the August 9th flood, I remember cars being submerged in the water. I remember basements being flooded. I just remember being just shocked by how much water came. In Bayview, underneath a bridge near a pretty sweet trail, there's a well-known encampment that's been there well over a decade. It's added to at least 3 different homeless outreach groups I've spoken with. It's added to their route. And that night I've heard from a couple homeless outreach volunteers, they estimate maybe 5 people were there that night. And the river is so close to the encampment. It's like you have to crouch to get underneath where the men were staying at, and they have their mattresses laid out. And the river swelled to 17 feet high. And the next day, one of the first men was found in Lake Michigan near Discovery World. A couple days after that, Isaias was found, and Miguel Flores, who's from there, hasn't been found yet.
I mean, you do an incredible job both reporting on this last year, and then we're talking to you because you dig even deeper into who these men were and what happened. And out of the 5 men who were estimated to be there, one of them actually did get out, James, who he described what he saw happening with the river after it rose to 17 feet. He said it flooded the tunnel like encampment, like a whirlpool, pulling the men in and sweeping them away. The 3 men that were lost in the floods, Juan Carlos Sierra Campos, Isai Serna, and Miguel Flores, this piece kind of goes into who they were. So can you tell me about who Juan Carlos was, who he was, and why he came to Wisconsin?
Mm-hmm. Juan Carlos, I learned about him through his sister, his oldest sister, Isabel, and he came to Appleton, Wisconsin 24 years ago. And with the plan to work hard for a couple years with his siblings, with his older brothers, and his sister eventually came out, and I guess they all worked together for like about 4 years. And after his siblings were deported, I think things just got really hard. He didn't have, the family community support that he once had when he got here. And once his sister got back to Honduras after she, worked here for 4 years, it became even more difficult for her to stay in touch with her brother because he didn't have a cell phone, and years would go by before she'd hear from him. And then she learned that he moved to Milwaukee, and she learned that he was homeless through a TV news segment.
Yeah, that was wild, actually, that was the way that she had ended up finding out. And also how close that they were. And it felt like when he lost her, and he was still here by himself, he really kind of like lost that anchor. Let's talk about Isaías and Miguel, because the thing that's different with those two than Juan Carlos is that they have family here and they were a part of their families here. So tell me about those two men and kind of about their families in Milwaukee and their relationships with their families.
Yeah, they both had a lot of family here in Milwaukee. Isaías had been here for several decades. He became a resident, and he had a couple kids here, and he also had kids back in Mexico. And his family actually, the family I ended up speaking with for the story, those are his nieces and nephews, they actually lived in walking distance of the encampment. And they would see him every once in a while. He had been staying in and out of their basement for like basically their whole lives.
My parents tried their best to like house him and my uncle, because it's two of them, just to give them a home so they would be in the...
There was other times that he would end up, living somewhere else, get another job. But I think his struggles with alcoholism were really cyclical and would disrupt his life and kind of take a turn for the worse and make it hard for him to keep a consistent job, though he was able to work at the Salvation Army for 10 years. And then Miguel, I hear all from people I spoke with when I went to his search party last year, people were telling me he can really make you laugh. And he was just a happy, funny guy. He loved soccer. He would play soccer with his friends. I always say this park's wrong, this name of the park wrong. It's like Kazi.
Yeah, Kazi.
Yeah, Kazi Park is the shorthand. And it's a gorgeous park. And he would go there and, drink some beers with his friends and play several rounds of soccer. Then, go work maybe 40 to 60 hours with his nephew's construction company and go sleep under the bridge. And it's something he's been doing since he lived in Guanajuato. But that was something that he hoped would change with his life in America, that he would, work harder, keep working hard as he usually did, but, make a little bit more money, eventually have his own home and get his life in order and have his sister nearby and, spend more time with his grandnephews. He was always cheering for them from the sidelines while they played soccer. I heard he's really good at defense in soccer.
Yeah, you have some really touching anecdotes about how the family and him connected and how he still stayed really close to the nephews and everyone through soccer. But you also get into, with the men, is that they all came here from Honduras or from Guanajuato looking for something better, looking for this idea of the American dream. And I don't want you to generalize, but there is a common thread with the men's stories as far as what happened. And I just want to ask you, from your point of view, reporting what happened to these men, that they all came here looking for the same thing, but at the end of the day, they ended up underneath the same bridge.
To speak generally, I've never heard this story before. I've heard so many stories of people who worked so hard, came from nothing, came to this country with dreams, and it works out. I never heard about them getting lost along the way or not being able to overcome their coping systems and dying.
One of the most curious or interesting or frustrating parts of your reporting is that even within the year, Milwaukee Police and the county's examiner's office have still not concluded that the cause of deaths for these men was drowning. And this is even after Juan and Isaías were found in the river after the floods. And then Miguel wasn't found, but they did recover a body that was unidentified. That actually, it sounds like they're still waiting on test results from 5 months after the fact. So what does MPD and the examiner's office say when you ask them if this was the cause of death? And why does a ruling like this matter?
Yeah, so when I asked MPD last year if they would be the one that would decide if the victims were flood victims, they said that no, they wouldn't make that decision. It would be the medical examiner's office. So then when I asked the medical examiner's office, they said they don't do that. And I think if we were able to definitively know that they died of drowning, I feel like it's important for people to know what happened.
It does feel important to know what happened. It feels also important to be recognized, I think, by the city that you lived in and the city that your family lives in. And I bring that up because early on, Mayor Johnson had said that there were no casualties from the flooding when 3 men disappeared that night, and their bodies have since been recovered, either the day of, a couple days after, or in Miguel's case, it was interesting because his family, and you reported on this last year, started their own search party, basically, rented kayaks, hit the river. When they were out there 2 weeks after the flood, and you reported on this, the brothers found Miguel's backpack, his keys, and the wallet.
My uncle was a good man. He was very sweet, kind, and funny. He carried many emotions with him. He didn't know the best way to cope and heal with his past.
So this is a story about these three men and their families and kind of like the struggles that they went through over the years, over the decades. But this is also about so much more that you get into. You get into homelessness, addiction, and resources that don't exist. We talk about immigration. And then we ultimately talk about whose life is worth tracking and worth counting and whose isn't. So what can be taken away after reading this tragedy? What are we left with? What were you left with?
Addiction is just so challenging. Like I love to read memoirs and how people try to overcome them. And so much of that decision to get sober is from that individual. They have to make that choice for themselves and decide that they want something different. And that was what I was hearing a bit from like the Serna family, the nephews and niece of Isaias. They would tell him consejos, like advice, like to get sober, get your life in order, go to Alcoholics Anonymous, talk about your feelings, confront the shame you're feeling, and talk it out. He just wasn't there yet. People sometimes need more time to overcome that. But something that the family was saying that they want to do different is among their family, like with their siblings, they're going to talk things out. They want to, work through their emotions and their troubles together and that be their coping mechanism. But they also hope that the city, the police, or these homeless outreach organizations, volunteers will also go by these encampments and inform people about how cold the weather is or whether a flood's coming because they don't have phones, giving them the flood warning notification that I got on my phone that night. Care for people in the community and care about the people around you.
Yeah. I wish I could hug him right now because I know he went through a lot.
Gina Lee Castro is a public investigative reporter with the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. You can find her reporting on their website. She spoke with WUWM's Jimmy Gutierrez. What does the future of climate disasters and mitigation look like in Wisconsin? Last year, a group of UW-Milwaukee graduate students partnered with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources to find out. The report, called Rising Waters, Rising Costs, looks at how flooding has already impacted Wisconsin residents and what can be done. WUWM's Jimmy Gutierrez spoke with the graduate students about their report. First, we'll hear from Milwaukee resident Tom Maddox about how last summer's historic flooding impacted him.
How has this neighborhood changed as far as this bioswale? Like, what do you remember being here when you were in business all that time ago?
This here was just an open field, flat ground. They had said one time that this was going to be apartments put here, but ended up not apartments, and this used to be a park right here, and they taking the park away and put this factory here because they said that it would be people in the community would be employed at the factory, but I don't know how many people from the community works over there, but they took that park out of the community.
One of the things we're looking at and talking to people about is flooding. Have you had flooding in your businesses or your house over the years?
I had flooding in my home 10, 11 years or so, somewhere around in that ballpark area. But yeah, my basement flooded real bad. Couldn't go down there no more before I made it to the bottom of the step because the water was just everywhere over there. And I called FEMA, whoever that was, they came and, estimated did. And after, I think, couple of days or so, the water did go down.
Did you have flood insurance at the time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I got paid, for it. They paid me for my stuff, damage and stuff. But, I'd rather not for it to be damaged because, you get old stuff that you have that some of my grandparents' stuff that I had that, you lose the water, get to it. So you can't recover that type of stuff, sentimental values you can't recover.
Are you all ready for your moment?
I think so.
Sure.
Okay.
I'll try my best. So my name is Evelyn. I was a second-year student at the School of Freshwater Sciences at Milwaukee. And on the report, I worked on the green infrastructure solutions in Milwaukee.
Hi, I'm Cami Armendariz. I am going to be in my second year at UW-Milwaukee as a water policy master's student. And within the report, I was doing flood risk and socioeconomic data mapping.
How's it going? My name is Joe McCormick. I'm also a freshwater policy student at UWM, and in this report I focused on the overlay of flood insurance with those socioeconomic indicators.
Can you tell me about the impact that flooding has in Wisconsin? What did you all learn about that?
Sure. I mean, flooding is the most common and most costly natural disaster in the state of Wisconsin. And with the effects of climate change, it's expected that more frequent and severe storms are going to increase the amount of flood damage that takes place. So municipalities around Wisconsin are working really hard to shore up their own mitigation techniques. But even if you have the best mitigation techniques, there's still always going to be flood risk, which is why we try to emphasize the adoption of personal flood insurance policies.
What makes an area susceptible to flood risk or flood damage?
In the city of Milwaukee, it's susceptible to flood damage because there's a lot of impervious surfaces here. And
so looking around a neighborhood like this where you can see large buildings, abandoned manufacturing, a lot of hard surfaces, very little trees, this would be like a pretty prime example of impervious surfaces and susceptible to flooding.
Yep, exactly. And within this area, in our report, we looked at the socioeconomic indicators, but a lot of that is areas where it was all hardscape now because of the community and the history of the urbanization of people, I guess.
Socioeconomic mapping.
Yes.
What is it? Why does it matter? And what does it tell us about flooding and how to keep people not wet?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so FEMA has normally been the historic kind of landmark figure that delineates 100-year floodplains, which is kind of what Evelyn was just talking about. And these floodplains tend to have a lot of prior data mapped on them. It's what local municipalities, other things are kind of relying on when they're trying to prepare for any flooding disasters that are going to happen. But then again, there's a lot of floodplains that aren't actually mapped by FEMA, or the ones that are mapped, it's old data. It's not really focused on socioeconomic indicators. So there's a lot of things that could go wrong there where municipalities aren't really prepared. So a really important thing is not only to apply ecological things when you're mapping for FEMA, but also applying in socioeconomic indicators, and that can range from okay, how many people have diabetes in this area, to a large thing we focused on was renters and things like that, because there's the ability to kind of recover from a big natural disaster changes drastically whether you own your house or whether you're a renter in terms of if you got that insurance or anything. Hurricane Katrina and Hurricane Harvey were excellent examples that we utilized in our report that really showed how much more renters suffered, and then especially Black and Hispanic populations in the area. So there was one really great project by Groundwork Milwaukee, and I'm forgetting their other partners they were working with, but they specifically focused on Milwaukee as their case study and outlined a ton of socioeconomic indicators, again, ranging from diabetes to how many people are in the household, income, and countless others. I highly recommend reading through their report.
If we're talking about renters, which the majority of Metcalf Park residents are renters, what are some of the insufficiencies when it comes to flooding insurance and then specifically dealing with renters?
Sure. So we talked earlier about flood zones. Flood zones delineate risk, and they're categorized from X to V, and each different region has a different level of risk. Things that are called SFHAs, or Special Flood Hazard Areas, SFHAs. Those are areas where you've got mortgage requirements to have flood insurance. So if you want to get a mortgage and you want it backed by the federal government, you need to have a flood insurance policy. And as a result, that's kind of the only regions where you see widespread adoption of flood insurance policies. There's currently no mandates for standard renters insurance to include flood insurance.
So why would they?
Exactly. And I think a lot of people don't understand their risks. There's been a lot of academic evidence to support the fact that people generally have really poor risk perception. They don't think it'll happen to them. And, traditionally it's been expensive. So flood insurance historically has always been operated by these two levels. It's private, which is relatively new, and the FEMA National Flood Insurance Program, the NFIP. And the NFIP covers the entire nation, right? It's been around since 1968. It's extremely debt-saddled due to these high extreme payout events like Katrina and Hurricane Andrew and Hurricane Ida. It's paying hundreds of millions of dollars every year just to pay off its own debt. And, future federal funding looks a little grim. So that's where private insurance needs to step up and offer more customizable options with different price points based on risk. There's a lot more advanced modeling that allows for them to create these more nuanced policies. But as of now, I think there's just a large amount of unawareness about flood risk, about flood policy options, and about the financial devastation that can occur if a flood event happens at your house.
All right, Evelyn, I've got a question, because if we're talking about how do you serve underserved, underinvested communities, I feel like 30th Street Corridor, this right here in front of us is an example of that. So can you tell me a little bit about what you learned with the work with MMSD in the 30th Street Corridor?
Yeah, so MMSD is kind of targeting those underserved communities, and infrastructure is really costly to fix over time. So to kind of combat that and take a better approach, they're also implementing green infrastructure such as bioswales. And those are large stormwater basins that help capture water where it falls and prevent water from going into those pipes and over flooding that system, because then that's going to lead to a sewer overflow, which then dumps a mixture of raw sewage and stormwater into Lake Michigan, which we don't want. So this is kind of preventing that from happening. So they kind of just reach out to underserved communities and tell them about the projects that are happening and make them familiar with what's being done in their community, and then also kind of give them strategies that they can help implement, such as small-scale green infrastructure, like rain barrels and rain gardens in their own homes, which they help provide and educate the community on as well.
What surprised you about your study and just going through the data and learning what you did?
For me, at least, when looking at the data, just the extreme number of flooding blind spots that are missed in mapping. There's a lot of flood risk hotspots where there's significant pluvial flooding, which just means that the drainage systems, again, like Evelyn mentioned earlier, are going to be overwhelmed, and these areas are going to be heavily flooded and damaged. So looking at maps where you look at traditional FEMA mapping tools versus when you combine social vulnerability data, you'll see so many more communities that are going to be affected.
Yeah, and I guess I would just add to that, when you look at the insurance adoption, it similarly points to a lot of coverage gaps. FEMA data suggests the fact that over 80% of all residential NFIP policies are held by individual homeowners and not 2 to 4 family residences, which suggests a real lack of coverage for renters and people living in multiple unit buildings.
I'd say just learning about the 30th Street Corridor projects and the basins themselves was super interesting as I kind of focus on the green infrastructure. I believe the West Basin, which is the larger of the three, can capture up to 31 million gallons of water, which is just really hard to even picture in your mind, how much water that is. So I think that's really neat and cool.
What I'm hoping the story gets to is the solutions part of everything, but I'm curious if there are other parts of the solutions and the takeaways that you all highlighted or featured in the report.
For mine, for people themselves, would be just to look into, MMSC offers programs for rain barrels and rain gardens. Just finding out what resources there are for you as a person to try to capture water where it falls and install your own small-scale green infrastructure, because that will help capture water where it falls and prevent flooding and overwhelming of the sewer system.
you should get flood insurance. It's estimated that 1 inch of flood damage can cause $25,000 worth of damage. I don't think people quite understand their risk. I don't think people are fully aware of the financial devastation that can occur with an uninsured flood event. There's a lot of flexible flood insurance packages, and there's a lot of government relief programs that are worth looking into if you're currently uninsured. It's definitely worth exploring. Get flood insurance.
I would say for just organizations, government employees, other officials who are dealing with this and trying to find solutions, make sure you're communicating with the public in a very engaging way, creating visuals that are understandable to the public. Again, Groundwork Milwaukee made like an Esri story map. And if you look at it, the colors are beautiful, just making something that the general public, someone who knows nothing about flood insurance, who doesn't know what any of these acronyms mean, they can get it and they'll want to keep reading it. So just make it science communication and make it good.
That was UWM School of Freshwater Science graduate students Cami Armendariz, Joe McCormick, and Evelyn Grimm, authors of Rising Waters, Rising Costs. They spoke with WUWM's Jimmy Gutierrez last summer. Lake Effect is available as a podcast, so you can listen when you like. Find it wherever you get your podcasts, then subscribe, download, and listen on demand. In about 15 minutes, we'll bring you some new local music in the Milwaukee Music Roundup. But first, we'll look at the summer meal programs provided to kids in Milwaukee and examine who's responsible for keeping kids fed in the summer. That's coming up on Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR. You're listening to Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM. I'm Joy Powers. In Milwaukee, there's a program that blends federal money, city agencies, and private donors to provide free meals for kids during the summer. Across the country, feeding kids during the summer often falls to nonprofits or school districts when school lunches aren't an option. WUWM education reporter Catherine Kokel speaks with Brandis Stockman and Justin Chu of the National League of Cities. Their conversation about summer meal programs is part of our series Seeking Solutions, Food Access in Milwaukee. They share how cities have approached hunger and why they believe it should be everyone's responsibility.
So Milwaukee partners several organizations together, such as the Hunger Task Force, which uses federal dollars that are matched by private organizations to do free summer meal distribution at 170 sites and more around the city. And so in contrast to how some other cities do it, where there are maybe a dozen sites or half a dozen sites in schools that serve meals, Milwaukee has really expanded that beyond to almost 200 sites. And the meals are free. Families don't need to register. They don't need to qualify. They do need to eat the meals on site, but those are offered at most sites Monday through Friday, multiple times a day. So free lunches or dinners or free lunches and snacks are distributed throughout the summer. And so I wanted to ask you two how this compares to other programs around the country and why city governments, like the organizations in the cities that you work with, view summertime hunger as a public issue.
I think that often people might see cities as being responsible for things like infrastructure, public safety, and things like that. But really, cities are concerned about, the health and well-being of their residents. We know that children that are hungry are more likely to struggle academically, to have behavioral challenges at school and just in general, and to have just in general poor physical and mental health. And if I'm just looking at the examples of the, academics and the school-based things, even though we know cities aren't directly responsible for overseeing their school districts, cities and mayors really care about the effectiveness and the quality and the services that are being provided by schools. Because generally, when you have a family that's looking to move into a community, one of the first things they look at is school. Are my kids going to have a good educational experience there? And if the answer is yes, then that's going to be a big motivator for them. And so when we're looking at school levels of academics and behavior issues, that's definitely something that cities care about. We also know that cities care a lot about workforce development, economic mobility, and we know that hunger can affect long-term outcomes. So if the youth are not being fed during the school day, if they're struggling in school, then it is more likely that they're going to end up on a pathway that doesn't necessarily result in long-term economic mobility for them, their families, or themselves.
Justin, I understand that you work specifically in the realm of the rising cost of living, and that is something that I've heard over and over again from families in reporting the story, that maybe things were going a little bit better a couple of years ago, but as the cost of fuel and food has gone up, that things have gotten even tighter, which has forced them to seek out resources like these. I wonder what you're hearing when you're talking to cities around the country about how they are reframing these programs and staffing these programs and providing resources in a moment when the cost of living is just making life so much harder for so many people.
Things that we've found for cities that they're exploring, especially in the space of limited or changing federal spending priorities, is really focusing on a whole human or holistic approach. And what that means in more simple terms is they're focusing on food access, but in addition to food access, they're building in wraparound services to support other types of benefits access, right? That could be something like utility assistance, or they're working with other community-based organizations to help secure things like healthy meals, food nutrition, and food education. These types of programs really help cities in a space where their budgets are getting tighter and they need to be a little more creative about their programming. So part of that is they are also focusing on building a program and portfolio that fits a more engaged city, really investing in part from their local leaders all the way down to their staff, showcasing that this hunger issue and childhood hunger is not, neighborhood by neighborhood or, person by person. It's an entire city, a full city and full community issue.
Yeah, I see your point too, that like when we're thinking about whose responsibility it is to look after children, I think some people argue that when the school day ends or the school year ends, like it's on parents. And as we're seeing, it's harder and harder for parents to actually make ends meet and make that happen. And I wanted to ask too about, in that vein, common misconceptions about who is hungry and what popular myths there are about child hunger and how cities can address that.
Yeah, I think some of the common misconceptions is that childhood hunger is something that only impacts specific areas or specific demographics. In those misconceptions, it is extremely harmful because it creates and reinforces stigma around accessing benefits that people need. Food and food access is part of our basic needs, as we may or may not know from Maslow's hierarchy of needs. In that sense, people from all walks of life may need access to these services. So these could be children of working families, they can be children of multi-generational houses, they can be rural families, they can be urban families, whatever it is. The children in those households need food access, and assistance programs help bridge that gap. And by creating a stigma or myths around who is accessing these programs, only furthers to alienate and delegitimize these types of programs.
I think we're also seeing changing demographics today because there are a lot of changes that are happening in the workforce. There are job losses in communities at a level that maybe some communities might not have seen before. Maybe AI is impacting the community. Maybe parents are getting laid off from their position. And obviously, these hunger issues for children are not issues that are focused specifically on children. Like there's a reason why the family can't afford food. And really addressing all of the issues that result in childhood hunger is the way to go. And cities are really uniquely positioned to be able to address those things. Something that we've seen really effective is community centers that are staffed with social workers. And they can meet with families, they can take referrals, they can meet with the families of the youth that might be participating in recreation or after school or summer programs and figure out really what those overall needs are. Because when you're able to address all of the issues that our families are being faced with today, that includes childhood hunger and addressing those issues that they might be facing too.
If you're just joining us today, we're speaking with Brandis Stockman and Justin Chu of the National League of Cities. Something that I've heard a lot in this reporting is that hunger isn't just about feeding kids, and it's not just impacting whether their stomachs are full, that this eventually grows into an issue that touches so much of our community. Brandis, what do you think of that?
I think children's food issues are an economic development issue, right? There's a reason why families are having difficulties providing adequate nutrition for the whole family, including their kids. And cities are very invested in workforce development. They're interested in attracting businesses to their community. They're interested in having their residents have a higher standard of living based on their employment. And when we see cities addressing that issue specifically, we often see a lot of success in those general basic needs just being met. So when cities have, financial empowerment classes, sometimes we've seen cities with entrepreneurship classes or bring in partnerships with banks to be able to talk with families about budgeting and planning out their income to be able to meet their basic needs. Those are other ways that can really directly impact the issue of childhood hunger, but also directly impacts a lot of other things that contribute to other challenges that families are facing today.
I think the thing I want to add is that childhood hunger and addressing childhood hunger is a full city, full community effort. So from your elected officials all the way down to resident groups, tackling childhood hunger requires a consistent investment in partnerships. The cities are at the forefront of this issue in understanding the different levers to pull and what connections need to be made across different organizations and stakeholders, and really gathering those disparate missions into one focus in eradicating childhood hunger.
Thank you so much for sharing your expertise on this and kind of giving us a national view. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me about this today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Brandis Stockman and Justin Chu work for the National League of Cities. They spoke with WUWM education reporter Catherine Kokel for our series, Seeking Solutions, Food Access in Milwaukee. You can find more reporting at WUWM.com. This series is brought to you in part by John E. Sorensen, Christine Simchich, and Jim McNulty. Still to come, we'll listen to some new local music in this month's Milwaukee Music Roundup. That's next on Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR. This is Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM. I'm Joy Powers. Every month, Matt Wild from Milwaukee Record creates a list of some of the best new songs from local musicians. And every month, he shares a few of those songs with us for the Milwaukee Music Roundup. Matt Wild, thank you so much for joining us here on Lake Effect.
Thank you for having me back.
So this first song feels very David Bowie. That was my immediate thought. It feels a little dreamy, a little spacey, but very Bowie.
I like that. Yes, this is a new song from Milwaukee duo. They are called Genau, I believe it is pronounced. It is a German word, the internet tells me, and it means exactly or precisely. And I think it's an apt name for this group because they do have a very exact and precise sound. Now, Genau have been around for about 10 years, and they just kind of put out music, new singles, maybe some EPs, kind of whenever the mood strikes them. It's not a real, consistent project. So, like every 2-3 years, hey, here's a new random song. And they have one now. It is called Bronze Age. And the sound of this, yes, is very, very dreamy. It is kind of this cold wave, moody, a little bit gothy, kind of post-punk sound. I think it's fantastic. This song in particular, Bronze Age, has a real late summer, kind of hazy, dog days of summer kind of feel, or maybe even a little into the fall. It's such a sweet time of the year for me personally, so this song really gets to me. It's really great. This is a new song from Genau, and it is called Bronze Age.
Bronze Age by Genau. The next song we're going to talk about, it similarly has a kind of dreamy feel. It feels like a little shoegaze, but also kind of hardcore still.
Absolutely, and this is kind of how the band themselves describe their sound. The band in question is a newer band. They are called Crash House, and the song we're going to be listening to is called Mile High. It is from their debut EP that just came out. It is called Blueprints, and it's 4 songs, and they are fantastic, and they do describe themselves as kind of a post-hardcore grunge gaze band, just putting a whole bunch of stuff in there. For the EP itself, there's even, I think, more sounds going on in this. A lot of the songs on this EP have a real like kind of metal edge to them. There's some like kind of like some guitar shredding going on in some of these songs. But this one that we're going to be listening to, Mile High, this is definitely my favorite of the EP, and it is, like you said, a very kind of similarly dreamy, kind of hazy, late summer vibe. I really, really like it. This is Crash House with Mile High. Crash House. The next song we're going to talk about, indie punk. It sounds very Milwaukee to me. It's from a group that I'm not sure we've talked about previously, but they also have a very Milwaukee name. They do have absolutely a Milwaukee name, and that name is Killer High Life. What a fantastic name. Now, Killer High Life, they've been around for a couple of years, and I feel bad. I feel like I've really slept on this group. I've seen their name in listings and on show posters for a couple of years, and for whatever reason, I just never actually sat down and listened to them. I finally did, and I really liked what I heard, and I discovered that their new EP, which is called Found Dead, is their final EP. They're breaking up, I believe. The lead singer is going off to graduate school. So this, finally, when I get around to listening to Killer High Life, they're calling it quits. So, but yes, they do have this new EP. It is called Found Dead, and it's great. They describe themselves, I'll let them do the describing here because it's very accurate. Gay, Midwest emo, gut-wrenching, cathartic girl rage. Great stuff there. The song we're going to be listening to is called Kittens and Puppies, and I really like the sound a lot. I really like the vocals from a lead singer. Her name is Brennan DeShottle. Just a very kind of like 90s vibe to her vocals, and just a 90s vibe all the way through. So this is Killer High Life with Kittens and Puppies.
Take yourself into my bed. Therapies by Killer High Life. The final song we're going to listen to, I would say this is a pretty atypical genre for Milwaukee. Not a lot of pop rock. It has a really produced finish. Tell us a bit about this group.
Absolutely. This is a group called Alley Eyes, and the song we're going to be listening to is their latest single. It is called Good Times, and you're absolutely right. Very slick, very well-produced, anthemic, kind of a throwback, kind of aughts era, kind of indie rock. Some might call it indie sleaze era. You know, think of bands like the early Strokes or the Killers, stuff like that. Very anthemic. It feels like you could be listening to this in a big arena circa 2003 or something like that. Alley Eyes, they have been around for a little while, and they just put out a lot of great singles in this vein. Their last song that they put out a few months ago, that was called... what was that one called? That was called Punisher. And that was kind of a song about going out and just having kind of a crazy night. And this new song, Good Times, is kind of feels like the kind of the hangover from that previous song. They're back home, the kind of introspective, kind of all up in their feelings. It is a very nostalgic song. It is a very kind of bittersweet song about kind of lost youth and all those fun things that you feel when you're still young, oddly enough. So yeah, this is a great song. It is Alley Eyes, and the song is called Good Times.
My friends are bothering me. I don't feel anything. The sweat drips gently down my neck. I talks and smokers walks. Don't have the building blocks. You'll never see this man again. Good times gone by, friends in the grave. I don't remember when I felt alright. If all I wanted was to run from fights. Some days I know I'll never smile again. And it goes on and on and on. Give me back my youth. Give me back the nights that I spent huddled cold close to you. Give me back the ways. Give me back the days I spent waiting for things I won't change. Take me back, take me back, take me back, take me. Take me back, take me back, take me back, take me. Take me back, take me back, take me back, take me. Take me back, take me back, take me back, take me back, take me. I don't remember when I felt alright.
Good Times by Alley Eyes. Now, as I am being reminded of constantly, we're getting into fall. It feels a little unbelievable. Summer just, it feels like summer just started, and also that it's still going. What is this time of year like for you?
It is a wild time because, yeah, once the state fair is in the rear view mirror, it's like, uh-oh, it's time for fall. It's time to get ready for the spooky season if you're into that sort of thing. And actually, some of the songs we've been listening to, especially Ganow and Crash House, do have that kind of late summer and early autumn vibe. So I really, really love this time of year when it's still warm before it gets too cold and too miserable. I really like this time of year, and I really like listening to music like some of these songs at this time of year. I always put together a big playlist that just puts me in that mood, so I'm looking forward to just kind of soaking up these last few weeks of summer and getting ready for the fall.
Very nice. Well, Matt Wild, thank you as always for joining us here on Lake Effect.
Thanks for having me.
Matt Wild is the co-founder of Milwaukee Record. Every month he joins us to talk about some of the best new music from local bands. At WUWM.com, you can find all of our previous conversations. And that wraps up today's show. Thank you so much for being here with us. I'm Joy Powers. If you missed any of Lake Effect this week, you can find all of our conversations at WUWM.com. If you'd like to take the show on the go, you can download the Lake Effect podcast wherever you get your podcasts. A Milwaukee teacher's aide who was deported to El Salvador a year ago is now back in Milwaukee. We'll hear from her tomorrow on Lake Effect about her experience and her hopes for her future in Milwaukee. Thanks so much for joining us right here on listener-supported 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR.
It's gone. It's gone.